you all for being here. It's wonderful to have you here. It means a lot to have interest in something that I'm so passionate about. My talk today is called The Subconscious Mind, Nurturing Roots of Self-Love and Intuition in Early Childhood, 0 to 7 years old. And my name is Anna Miles, and I want to share a little bit about my background. I have a master's in education and a bachelor's in counseling. I've been a teacher, counselor. I've ran literacy programs and mentoring programs for over 25 years with all different types of programs and all ages, from preschool to high school. And I just most recently, my last position was in a one-room schoolhouse, which is what inspired me to do this talk. So I was with preschoolers through 8th grade. And that gave me an opportunity to realize that my passion is working with the younger age groups from that 0 to 7 window. And that's why I was inspired to do this talk. Because what I've noticed from working with that age group is that it's such a tender years for kids and their experiences and how that it shapes the rest of their life. I remember writing a grant, and in that grant it said kindergarten is the #1 predictor for how well a child will do in high school. Wow. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what it is a predictor of. So this talk is for parents, for caregivers, for grandparents, for teachers, and for everyone, for people like you that are here and that are interested in this information, which is so, I feel like, so important for us all. And it's for people who have parents. So raise your hand if you have parents. And raise your hands if you are a parent. So it pretty much covers us all. So my invitation to you is to adopt a beginner's mind. Be open and curious. Tap into a childlike innocence. Take a breath. Smile. Practice lightheartedness. When we let go of our preconceived notions, biases, and assumptions, we allow for new understanding and growth. What I've noticed is when I hear information that might bring up emotion in me that is something that might be uncomfortable, taking a breath really does help. It kind of loosens your body and gets that energy moving. I invite you to practice intentionally avoiding, judging, or labeling the information, and instead contemplate how the information might be useful to you. Many times if we are judging or labeling information, from what I've experienced, is that we've missed the part that could really have taught us something. So being open to that is what I invite you for today. And also I invite you to embrace the unknown. So sometimes this can involve acknowledging when an uncomfortable emotion it is brought up, and we can respond with curiosity and interest. A lot of this information, because it speaks to early childhood and it speaks to parenting, can bring up feelings for every one of us. And so I invite you to realize that that's normal, that's completely acceptable, and that is your experience when you hear this information. But maybe to this information, I'm just thinking, how would it feel to just be curious about it and contemplate it? And engage in self-compassion. Practice meeting yourself with kindness, patience, and understanding instead of judgment or self-criticism. And in summary, I invite you to open your heart and your mind to this information and listen from a place of love and curiosity. So we're getting into the science of it. I'm not a scientist. I'm an early childhood educator, but this was fascinating to me to learn this information. I was able to go to a conference this winter, a consciousness conference, and I learned so much, and that's what inspired me to gather this information and do my own research. So today's science estimates that 95% of our brain's activity is unconscious, meaning that the majority of the decisions we make the actions we take, our emotions and behaviors depend on the 95% of the brain activity that lies beyond conscious awareness. According to Bruce Lipton, who is someone that was at the consciousness conference, and I have to tell you, he was my favorite presenter. He was a light up on the stage, and he just came forward with such enthusiasm for this information from a positive standpoint because it helps us shift what we know. So he said in his book, The Biology of Belief, while your conscious mind is logical and analytical and only governs about 5% of your behavior, your subconscious mind is emotional, habitual, and governs 95% of your day. So this is the iceberg metaphor where this is your conscious mind. It's where the logical thinking, the short-term memory, willpower, and critical thinking lies. But underneath the surface in the subconscious, unconscious mind, 90% is your beliefs, your emotions, your long-term memory, your values, your protective reactions, your intuition, your imagination, fears, your self-image, programming, and it controls all systems in the body. A cognitive neuroscientist, Dr. Joseph Ledoux, puts it, consciousness is the tip of the iceberg. Most of what goes on in the mind is unconscious. So the conscious mind and the unconscious mind work together, but in very different ways. The conscious mind is the part you're aware of. It's logical, slow, and handles things like decision making, learning, and willpower. It processes about 40 bits of information per second. In contrast, the subconscious mind is automatic, fast, and powerful, processing up to 11 million bytes of information per second. The subconscious mind stores memories, emotions, habits, and deeply rooted beliefs, most of which were formed early in childhood. While the conscious mind can focus on just one thing at a time, the subconscious mind controls your heartbeat, breathing, habits, and emotional reactions without effort. In simple terms, the conscious mind is like the captain giving directions, but the subconscious is the crew running the ship. The driving analogy is one that really kind of brings it home for me. When you're first learning to drive, you're using your conscious mind. You're focused on everything, the mirrors, the pedals, the signals. It takes effort, attention, and you're very aware of what you're doing. But once you practiced enough, driving becomes automatic. You can drive while thinking about something else, your day, a conversation, or even a song. That's your subconscious mind taking over. It's running the program you've practiced. And I also, for me, when I think of this, I think of the emotion that comes with this. If you're someone who's afraid of driving, maybe it's a fear that you have. So when you were learning to drive, it might have been more of a difficult experience for you. And so your subconscious mind, you're getting over that fear by practicing. And so even if you were someone that waited until you were, let's say, 30 to get your driver's license, if you practice enough, that subconscious mind is going to come online and start to take over. Why is this information so important for parents? Well, according to Bruce Lipton, we live in a subconscious state, a theta state, from age 0 to 7 years, when the mind is like a sponge, absorbing everything without filters. This is a deeply hypnotic, imaginative state. During this state, we download our beliefs from the people closest to us and our community. So at birth, 0 to 2, the delta state here, the brain uses about 60% of an infant's body energy, 300 to 500 kilowatts per day. That's like running a 5K race every day just to build and run the brain. At age 2, it still consumes around 50% of the body's energy, where the adult brain uses only about 20%. So in the 0 to 2, they're in this detached awareness, conscious deep sleep state, and then they move into the delta state, that 2 to 7, bridging between consciousness and subconscious, and it's like a deep hypnosis or meditative state. From there, they move into the alpha state, imagination, creative flow state, and then into the beta, where the intellectual activities become online, and then life runs that subconscious programming underneath. That's the bottom of the iceberg. The child's mind is not a blank slate, but a fertile field ready to receive the seeds of knowledge and experience. This was Maria Montessori, The Absorbent Mind, in 1949. And I was a Montessori teacher for over 10 years and really looked into her research and the way that she believes that young children learn best and how to support young children. And I really like the idea of looking at it as a fertile field. And a sponge, but a fertile field. I think that those two analogies really help us when we think of the brain in that early ages. So in the importance of the first 7 years, it's often referred to as the imprint period in developmental psychology. So like we talked about, the brain is operating in theta wave state, making children highly impressionable. Children absorb information subconsciously, forming core beliefs about themselves, others, and the world. Experiences, especially repeated emotional and cultural, are stored as implicit memory. Memory that does not require conscious effort to retrieve, like riding a bike. They're also in the dreamlike thinking. Kids naturally blend reality with imagination, making them highly creative, but also susceptible to external programming. So these are things that I've noticed when I'm working with kids in the classroom. The key to brain development, kids really, when they're in that 3 to 7 window, they love new experiences, they love novel experiences, and they use their senses and they want to be hands-on. And so if we think about repetitive experiences, if we're giving them new experiences, they're taking that in. They're biologically wired to just take all of that information and integrate it. So it's repetition that also seeds that, and the emotion built into that. One of the things I noticed teaching kindergarten, I'd have students that could not remember their alphabet letters. And a lot of teachers use animals to teach the alphabet. One of the things that I noticed is if I learned about the child, each child had interests or new ideas that they would come into the classroom with, or their parents' names, or anything that I could connect the dots to a personal experience. So they would learn the letters so much quicker when it was personal, right? So they would remember their dad, let's say their dad's name was Bob. Easy to remember B because dad's name is Bob. So just that connecting to the emotion, it made them feel something. They saw the letter and it helped cement that into their memory. It's also important for downtime. I think this is super important and it's not talked about as much. One of the things I've noticed is that kids are really overwhelmed right now with so much going on, even in the young ages. They might have multiple things to do after school, not to mention the pressures of school. So downtime is also super important for helping them get the rest, because we think about all the work that their brain is doing, how important that rest is. And then the secure attachment, this isn't something I'm going to talk a lot about, but we know through research that having that secure attachment, especially when they're needing to be soothed, is super important, and taking that time to pause and to step in and give them that safety that they need. So these are some examples of some beliefs that might be programmed during this theta state, that 0 to 7 through messaging, modeling, direct experience, or emotional responses. And these can be positive or negative, and they can have different effects on our well-being. So I put up some program beliefs that are positive and some down here that are negative. This first one, we always support each other in this family. The potential impact is that it builds trust, emotional safety, and strong bonds. What I've noticed when kids come into my classroom, if that's a message that they have received from their family, they let me know. They share it in many different ways. They might even tell me the first thing when they walk in the door because they're talking about their families. They're talking about how much support they expect and always are getting from their families. So that is something that they let me know as a teacher, and it's so interesting to kind of see that's been seeded in their subconscious mind. You can be anything you set your mind to. The potential impact encourages self-confidence, motivation, and resilience. I love this because if you say to a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-year-old, you can be anything you set your mind to, a lot of times they'll say, "You're right. Yes, I can do it," which is so exciting to me because they have that confidence and they have been given the opportunity to be shown that, right? So let's say they're showing you that by building, the tallest blocks tower you could build, right? So that's very exciting to them. They can do it. So it's just these little milestones that cause these big impacts. A negative programming belief might be, we don't talk about our problems. And this can lead to emotional suppression, anxiety, and poor communication skills. So I know from my family, my parents in their generation, this was something that was brought up often, was not talking about problems. And that leads to some problems in communication. So one of the things I've noticed with working with older kids, especially middle school, they have a more difficult time with the communication. They get a little frustrated when they don't have the tools. So they haven't been given those tools, and then when they become teenagers, it's really difficult for them to be able to integrate those tools. You have to earn love. So that promotes conditioned self-worth, perfectionism, and fear of failure, and the typical people-pleasing personality that we've all heard of. So having to earn love, that might look like if you're not being good, then you're not receiving love. So these are some programmings that can happen in those 0 to 7 windows that can cause some impacts that can be hard to overcome. The thing that was interesting to me when I've learned about this is all of these things in your subconscious mind, if you're aware of them, you're closer to shifting them. Most of us aren't aware of them, and so they're just kind of running under the surface. But if you have a tinge of information that lets you know about these programs, you're closer to helping shift those for yourself. So let's get inspired. This part, I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of my experiences, some stories, some information that might help parents. And for those of you who you're grandparents or caregivers or know people who are raising kids, these are going to give you some tips. So I had to start with some quotes to live by. I personally have been collecting quotes for my whole life. I'm a big quote fan, so I wanted to share some quotes with you. Can't do a slideshow without quotes and cute pictures. So, every time a human being is born, a message from the spiritual world is delivered. Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner is someone who is from Waldorf, and I'm sure that you've all heard of him. This quote right here just brightens my world when I think of this quote, because There is so much to be said for that. The spiritual world is delivering a message that here I am. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to think of. So children do not need us to shape them. They need us to respond to who they are. So these are some pictures that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about. This is our son, Emerson. He's around 4. And this is him fishing with his grandfather. And Emerson, like many kids, was very shy when he was younger, and he wasn't interested in hanging out in big groups of people. And every St. Patrick's Day at our school, we would hide nuggets of gold in the sandbox. Well, they were rocks painted gold. And the kids would go and dig them up, and Emerson would be like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. He could just see the writing on the wall. He was like, no, thank you, I don't need the gold. So one of the things that we would do is he would get a chance to do it after school when it was a lot less chaotic, and same with some of the other students that didn't want to do it in the mix with all the kids. And so for me, it was one of those examples of whether if I was a child who was very outgoing, which I know I was also a little bit shy, it might be easy for me to get into that sandbox. But for those kids who maybe that's not their comfort zone, it's good to give alternatives. The reason why I added this picture here is because just this weekend, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she just brought this up randomly, and I thought, well, I have to add it to the talk because it's so pertinent. So she is a musician. When she was 3 years old, she comes from a family of musicians. When she was 3 years old, her mother saw her playing the piano and noticed that she was really taking to it. She was almost playing intuitively at 3. And so her mother went and hired a classical pianist to give her lessons. And so she took lessons for years and years and years, professional lessons. She went to music school. And then when she got into college, some of her friends, she was in the music program, they would get together in the evenings and they would just play and jam. And so she put herself out there. She started to think about what would it be like to play intuitively. She knew that she had it, but it was something that she'd never truly tried because she'd been so part of a structured program with her lessons. And it took several nights of putting herself out there and really reprogramming that subconscious mind. And now that's her main gift as a musician. She's able to sit down with different bands and just play, and she's able to take both the classical training and her intuitive and turn that into a beautiful career. And one of the things that we talked about was what would have happened if both and, right, when she was younger? Where would that have gone? Because she said it was very difficult getting to that place. It was hard to change those programs in her mind and to play intuitively. Become silent in your children's presence. Free yourself of all distractions and attune yourself to them in a state of curiosity and delight. So this is Dr. Shefali Samari, and she actually is a conscious parenting expert. And every time I've read her books or taken a class from her, she just really speaks to me. The idea of just being present and freeing yourself from distractions. As an early childhood educator, I've seen so many kids that that's just what they crave, is a non-distracted parent, even if it's for 10 minutes. And so that just, the curiosity and the delight it brings to their life to just have that silent time with them is so very important. And it really seeds that subconscious mind into believing I matter. So this is an actual quote, two quotes that are dear and near to my heart. When I was pregnant with our son Emerson, I had just found this Rachel Carlson book, and I thought, wow, what a legacy to leave for your child. Inside the book is actually my one of the picture of the first time we had the ultrasound picture, because it was something we wanted to intentionally have as a legacy, because that's how I was raised. This is a picture of Emerson and my dad fishing, and that's to give nature, adventure, part of a family legacy. If a child is to keep alive his inborn sense of wonder, he needs the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with him the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. Rachel Carson. Those who contemplate the beauty of earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. For me, I can say that my strength and my perseverance does come from having the ability to spend time in nature and have nature hold me during times of grief or sadness. And that's based on having the comfort level to be in nature. And I'm super grateful for that. This is a picture of, I do a forest club, and I get together with families and moms and dads and their little ones, and we explore the forest. And this is a picture from one of my kindergarten classes when we would do wildflower hikes in Jacksonville. And like I said, this is a picture of my dad and our son Emerson when he was about 3. And I've noticed each time I've brought children into nature, they light up. And I just feel that this is a great gift for parents to give kids. So, parenting philosophies and helpful practices for building a healthy subconscious mind. So we're just going to go over a few of my favorite things. Conscious parenting, mindfulness, SEL, which stands for social emotional learning. That's my expertise, is teaching mindfulness and social emotional learning to kids. I had a job in public school where I taught SEL to preschool through 5th grade once a week in the schools, and actually more than once a week in the younger grades. Authentic positive messaging and nurturing intuition. These are all 4 things that I really have found really help with that subconscious mind seeding. There's a wide range of information on these topics, and I encourage you to follow, implement, and support the ones that resonate with you. There's so much on the internet and so much to look up on your own if you're interested in any of these practices with young kids. So, conscious parenting. And this is a quote: conscious parenting is not about being perfect, but being aware. It's about becoming mindful of our reactions so we don't project our own fears and baggage onto children. This is a picture of Dr. Shafali, and she really speaks to my heart, because I've always noticed that as a kindergarten teacher specifically, that relationship between the parent and the child is so important. And I've always felt that even as in school, parents, the more a parent is involved, the more a parent is supporting the child, you see so much more healthy interactions through that. And she says to shift the parent paradigm so that it is no longer about raising of the child, but raising of the parent's consciousness. I think that's pretty, for me, when I first stumbled upon her work, I had tears coming down my face because it resonated with me as a parent and as a teacher and as a daughter as well. Conscious parenting and mindfulness, how it supports subconscious brain development. So it builds core beliefs like we talked about. It helps create feelings of safety and worth, because you're tending to the child and you're helping regulate their nervous system and bringing in that calm environment. A lot of times we don't think about the environment and how it wires the brain. So what I've noticed from many years of working with kids, I would stand out in the mornings to greet kids and their parents when they'd come to school. And if a child was coming out of a car where there looked like there had been a lot of stress, their day would be a little bit off. You could see it kind of shift them. but the kids who got out of the car calmly, you could tell they might have been in a different situation in the morning before they came to school. So the environment is a super important piece to that. There's a whole talk you could do on the environment and what that does for the brain. Creates secure attachment. So this is where that consistency part comes in. If you're consistent when you are helping a child regulate big emotions and giving them that care and concern consistently, they expect their needs to be met, right? So if 1 minute you're helping them and the next minute you're not, it can be very confusing for them. So consistency is super important. Also validating emotions like anger teaches healthy emotional responses. I had a student one time when I teach a program, it's called the Little Spot. It's a bunch of different little spots and they're emotion spots. And he said he'd never been angry before. Well, I saw him be angry like 5 minutes ago, but he just didn't want to admit it. In his family, if you get angry, you're in trouble. And so that was something that, for me, I thought, well, this is a chance to help integrate that in a healthy way, right? So we gave examples and modeling and helped him with that. That's just one way that if we validate our emotions, they don't get suppressed, and it is healthier for us. Shape brainwaves. Young brains in the theta state absorb tone, energy, and mood. So there's information that has come out with Dr. Gabor Mate, and I believe it's been out for a while. The mother, when a mother is pregnant, if she is going through stress, if there's an event that is causing her to release hormones of stress, it affects the baby. There's new research that shows directly how that can affect. And so the tone, the energy, the mood of the mother really affects the baby, as well as that 0 to 7. Any type, kids they understand, they can kind of read adults, and those things can affect them. Models regulation. Kids mirror how adults handle life situations, both positive and negative, especially stressful or emotional ones, encoding those patterns subconsciously. So the calmer the environment, in those first years especially, it really helps seed that safety feeling. And that's something conscious parenting and mindfulness does. So this is an example of how to help with the nervous system. We're present, we're attuned. We teach our children how to feel safe inside their own bodies. We build trust in themselves, and we lay the groundwork for lifelong resilience, emotional intelligence, and inner calmness. This, to me, speaks to a mindful, calm parent becomes the borrowed nervous system for the child until they develop their own. So when a child is very young, they're not able to regulate their nervous system. And so they mirror and attune to the parents, right? And so a regulated nervous system, a calm nervous system in a parent is directly related to that in a child. And of course there's different things that can come up, like health issues and things, but this is across the board, that piece that comes in where there's nervous system safety that's seated in the subconscious mind. And being a conscious parent isn't about being perfect. It's about doing your best. And I feel like that, if anything, that's to me the most important message for parents, is we're not trying to be perfect. This is a lot of information, but we're trying to choose the pause. Choose the pause, choose the breath, and kind of respond in a way that's going to give your child a sense of safety, a sense of belonging. So this is an example of safety through conscious parenting. So let's say that you just planted your garden and your little 2.5-year-old was playing in the garden, and you were planting and you had your back turned, you turned around and they had pulled them all out. Well, that would be pretty frustrating, and you might feel like yelling. Not all not all of us would respond that way, but in the moment it might happen. So if that happens, it's important to stay present and not numb out, to apologize instead of defend. So let's say that you did have a response that was a little over the top, and you're noticing your 2 or 3-year-old is like, oh, I didn't, they're having a reaction. So that's a teachable moment. That's a teachable moment of giving you a chance to kind of apologize for your response and then explaining to them why you were upset. And instead of numbing out and just doing your planting without, have them help and see how much work it took to plant. And then modeling a way of validating their feelings and repairing and reconnecting. So just taking that time to pause, right? It might be just so much easier to go and replant them and move on because you need to get in the house and cook dinner. But just that pause in that moment is such a teachable experience for the subconscious mind. So this quote here kind of sums it up. If there's anything we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could better be changed in ourselves. Carl Jung. So these are some more mindfulness tips. And these are things that if you look into mindful parenting and conscious parenting, these are things that I teach to kids in schools. The kids love learning this information. And it's interesting to me because it doesn't matter what age I've gone in and taught this to, there is that consistent interest that they have. And they like to practice it and then tell you about it, which I think is pretty great. Set clear boundaries, accept imperfection, foster connection over control, create routines and rituals. Rituals can be anything from having a once a month candlelight dinner just for the heck of it. It could be anything from having your morning walks together on Saturday mornings. Allow space for natural consequences, encourage independence, model a attitude of gratitude, and nurture and take care of yourself. A regulated parent creates a regulated child. So, authentic positive messaging. I'm going to move through this. It's basically our brain development that comes from this is the neural pathways are related to confidence, security, and resilience, and that strengthens it when you hear a positive message. It encourages releases dopamine and reinforces learning and motivation. And a loving, affirming environment reduces cortisol or stress hormones. And it promotes emotional regulation. I've had a lot of students who were not regulated, who had a difficult time with behavior, and authentic positive messaging was the one thing that they responded to. And this wasn't done all the time. This was done in moments where they needed that connection. They needed to have that direct focus on them, because many times when you hear a positive message, it can calm you just hearing the words. How positive messages affect self-awareness and self-image. The subconscious mind absorbs messages as absolute truth, shaping long-term self-beliefs. Loving words like you are capable or you are loved become part of a child's inner voice as they grow. So I'm going to read these to you, and I invite you to just close your eyes or just take a deep breath and just feel how they make your body feel when you hear these words. Imagine if you were a young child or if you were saying these to a young child. There is no one else in the world like you. I love who you are. You give the best hugs. I love hearing what you have to say. You can do this. You carry your power with you wherever you go. You are thoughtful and kind. You bring so much joy to our home. You are so creative and capable. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. Your needs are not a problem. So to conclude with that piece, I'm sure many of you have heard of the Hawaiian traditional Ho'oponopono, and it's these 4 statements. And I have used these as a parent, as a wife, as a friend, as a teacher, and many times it can be done just through energy and just through noticing the situation. But with children, it's really important to use your words. And so let's say that there's been a conflict. Maybe there had something happen in the morning and there was some stress, and so there was an event that happened where you know that you maybe responded in a way that you want to take back. You reacted, had a big reaction, and you realized it wasn't appropriate. Well, making the choice to say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, shifts that. Because it gives them, it honors and acknowledges that we make mistakes. But it also gives you a chance to feel it as well. So Ho'oponopono is not just for the others, but it's for you as well. So we can do it for ourselves as well. The words you say now will be the dominant voice your child hears in their head forever. That's a big one. That gives you all the feels. And I like to think of it as a chance to choose well for parents and to give yourself grace, because we're all doing our best and there's no perfect parenting, and it's a choice to pause in the moment and shift what we choose to say. So this is just an invitation for that. So intuition and the subconscious mind. So for me, intuition is very important. This is how I teach and how I counsel kids and families. Is I spend a lot of time using my intuition. So like, let's say there's a lesson that I'm doing, and there's usually in public schools now, there'll be a curriculum to follow. And if I'm teaching kindergarten and I'm following a curriculum, but there's a rainbow outside, we're going to be going to check the rainbow out. So it's just using your intuition to see how to bring more joy into life. And science suggests that intuition has a strong biological basis. It's a deep-rooted understanding that arises effortlessly from our subconscious mind, drawing on past experiences, emotions, and knowledge rather than conscious analysis. Unlike logical reasoning, which relies on conscious analysis, intuition operates effortlessly and spontaneously, often guiding us towards the right decision, even when we can't explain why. Supporting a child's intuition by honoring their gut feelings, encouraging stillness and wonder, and validating their inner knowing builds a confident, emotionally grounded subconscious mind and a lifelong inner compass. So these are 2 examples. So with screen time is something for me as a teacher, and I'm sure as parents and as just citizens that know about how much devices are taking over our children's days. This is super important. So when I would ask kids this last couple years that I've taught, what'd you have for breakfast? Many of them could not answer me. They couldn't remember, or they maybe hadn't had breakfast. And after some research and looking into it, I realized many of them had had breakfast. It was screen time. That's what they had had for breakfast. They were getting up in the morning, they were getting themselves dressed, and then they were getting on the screen. And these are kindergartners, first graders, second graders. So for me, that piece really shifts how I want to be a teacher and show up for kids who are coming in with that screen time. And I want to help them see that their intuition knows that might not be healthy for them. So the intuition helps children make more informed and effective decisions about their uses of devices. Their inner guidance knows that screen time does not fill their bucket, but leaves them wanting more and their energy drained. So when I've talked to kids about this, I really am cautious, and I don't want to shame them. I don't want to make it be something that has going to cause them more stress. But when I talk to them about device time, inevitably they always intuitively know it's not good for them. It doesn't matter if they're preschoolers or if they're high schoolers. Even the high schoolers have a little tinge when you bring it up. I put together a slideshow one day with a pie chart of how many hours a high schooler, and I should have put it in here now that I think about it, a high schooler who was on a device for 8 hours for 4 years, how many hours they spent with family versus a device. The pie chart was taken up by time on device, and then there was sleep. And then there was a little bit of friends, and then there was a little bit of family. And that was very eye-opening to them because they realized my life is just on a screen. I mean, they see it, but it's just giving them that chance to notice their intuition. How does their body feel when they're on it? Do they feel tired? Do they feel exhausted? So using that intuition as a seed in that subconscious mind can help them as they get older to listen to their intuition more. Outside time is another example. Children thrive in it, their intuition awakens through it, and their subconscious remembers it. When children are raised with consistent, meaningful exposure to nature, they become more grounded, connected, and instinctively protective of the earth. Children who grow up connected to nature develop a deeper sense of empathy, awe, and stewardship. I've seen this time and time again. Children really know that the more time in nature, the better. At first, you might have a child that maybe isn't as interested in the outdoors, but the more comfortable they become, the more they just need that time to play and let out energy. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. This to me is super important as parents and teachers because we want to raise children who are interested in conservation and who are interested in community, who are interested in relationships. So the more that we seed the subconscious with these positive messages of being a part of a community, part of a group that is interested in conserving and taking care of our earth, the more children we will have who will help us be the human race that we're trying to be, which is finding that space where kids are honored in the fact that they will be adults someday, and we want to help seed that positive subconscious mind. So this is my unique approach. I choose to weave self-love, appreciation, and intuition into every one of my interactions with children and parents. These 3 things I've noticed as a teacher over the last 25 years are super important. And this is a conscious choice on my part because I feel like it gives me a chance to work with the whole child. And it's my responsibility, it's my ability to do that inspires me. When you're dealing with a child, keep all your wits about you and sit on the floor. And this is something that I embrace wholeheartedly, although I'm very tall, it's a long ways down there. And I'm getting stiffer and stiffer, but I do as much as I can is get on the floor and just have all my wits about me and really engage. So how do we best nurture self-love, appreciation, and intuition in the subconscious mind? Through magic, of course. So, my magic recipe: nature, animals, music, dance. These 4 things, I think, for kids and anybody. Shared joy is double joy. And I've noticed that kids can't get enough of any of these 4 things. And so this is pictures from my life that kind of give you examples of how that magic recipe brings so much joy. And with the music, I got a chance to do my own research, and that's what got me interested in doing this talk. So I want to share that experience with you. After I got back from the Conscious conference in January, I got a chance to sub into one of the schools that I used to teach at, into a second grade classroom. And those second graders were probably four years old when I taught there. And when I walked into the room, they all looked at me like, some of them remembered me, some of them were like, who is this person? Why do I want to hug her? You could tell they were just like, wait a minute, because they hadn't seen me in several years. And so I had them all sit down in their desks, and I said, do me a favor, let's all just close our eyes, and I'm going to start to sing a song. And if you know the song, help me sing it, and open your eyes. And so they all did, and it was a song that I sang to them every single day that I went into the classroom back 2 years prior, for at least 4 years, because I had taught them and their kid, that whole school, this song. So I started to hum it, and then I started to sing it. I wish I videoed this, because they all just started like smiling, and their eyes got big, and they started singing the song, and then one of them says, Miss Miles, and I said, yes, you remember. So it had been in their subconscious mind. I thought, wow, isn't that amazing? And the next question out of their mind was, where is Hershey and Puppy? I always brought these 2 stuffed animals. And I thought, I need to remember this, because they're in that theta state, that imaginative state, in that play state. Those stuffed animals were important to them. And it's interesting because I went all the way up to 5th grade with these kids, and they would get mad at me when I didn't bring the stuffed animals. So I just think that the play piece is so important. The imaginative piece is so important. The creative piece is so important. This is a picture of Emerson and his cat Holly. Animals just bring so much joy into our lives. I think it's so important to dance whenever you want to dance. Have a dance party. That's a great ritual to have with your family. Friday night dance parties. So more magical activities. Now I try to do these all every day. So I suggest that they're good not just for kids, but for adults as well. Quiet time, singing, building, dress up, cooking, water play, snuggle time, problem-solving games, storytelling, imaginative play, laughter, art, poetry, play, new experiences, meditation, books, wordplay, make a mess, intentional family time, and physical activity. Physical activity is super important, especially in this time of devices. I also noticed that it's important to use some brain gym, so that's something you could look up. There's certain activities that kids can do that really can cement that subconscious mind and get the brain moving well. Wordplay is important. If you look on any website for schools, the #1 job I've noticed that's out there is for speech and language pathology, because the kids are coming to school with very little language. And because they're not getting that back and forth conversation. And then that's not seeding the subconscious mind with that language. So there's just a big void, right? So more wordplay. In conclusion, I would love to share a story. This is a personal story about how the subconscious mind works when you least expect it. So this is the story, and I got permission from my son Emerson. He's going to be 21 in June, to tell this story. So when he was born, he loved to be swaddled really tight, and like any baby, he needed to be soothed when he was feeling agitated. And as a kindergarten teacher, I made up songs. So I made up a lullaby that just came kind of catchy, and I sang it to him all the time. It was one that I just made up, and little did I know what that would do. But so I want to share that with you and give you the story of this song. So it's I'm going to sing it, but I'm going to sing it in parts. So the first part said, Emerson, Emerson, king of the wild, wild west. Well, he wouldn't take his cowboy boots off or his cowboy hat. He was a cowboy from the minute he could remember being a cowboy. He actually only watched old westerns, and Roy Rogers was his favorite actor. Okay, so that happened. The second part of the song said, Emerson, Emerson, king of the wild frontier. I don't know where that came from, but I just said it. And fast forward to when he was 18 years old, he came home and said, I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to get a loan. I'm going to buy a sawmill. And we were like, okay, well, we'll support that 100% and let us know if we have to co-sign. So next day he comes and he gets the loan for the sawmill. He buys the sawmill at 18 without his parents co-signing. This is a picture of him with his second sawmill. He had just milled slabs of redwood. Now, the wild frontier was full of a lot of loggers and a lot of milling. So, I mean, can't make this up. It does run in our family. We do live rural area, and my great uncle was a miller, but still, he passed away before Emerson was born. So I just thought that was very interesting. He also is able to fall large trees in amazing ways. This was right by my mom's shop, and it didn't take much. He just was able to fall it. He can fall a tree between two fence posts. I've seen him do it. It's an interesting phenomenon. This is his business card, Deadfall Timber and Mill Works. The end of the song ended with, Mama loves you, yes she does. Daddy loves you, yes he does. Well, I asked Emerson if that's something that he feels has been seated in his subconscious mind, and he said definitely. And his dad and I both have noticed that. He doesn't question if we love him. He doesn't ever question that. And I'm so grateful I sang that song to him because it's one of those things that I get to tell you about it. And I get to inspire other parents to really kind of just have fun with it and put things out there that are going to give your kids this life that could be seeded from your intentions, from your positive messages, something to be excited about. And I really am grateful that I'm able to share this with you. Oh, and by the way, yes, we were both gifted childhood on the back of a horse. So that also is that adds to our outdoor adventure time. So
in the upper right, Anna.
Oh, that's me and Emerson.
That's you and
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was. Yep. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my services. I do Circle Time, a self-love club, and a forest club for young children and their parents. So this to me is really important because what I've noticed is when a parent is in the class with me when I'm doing the Circle Time, they use those skills at home. And then they text me and tell me about it. It's pretty amazing. I hear all these wonderful stories of the things that they're using at home that they've seen modeled in the Circle Time. I think parents being involved is so important in all ways. And so parent guidance and workshops, I offer parent one-on-one and workshops on different topics. I went over a lot of topics today. Thank you so much for listening to them, but there's just such a broad amount of information and things that parents can do that I didn't have access to when Emerson was younger or when I was teaching. But I had an intuition about many of it, and I know a lot of teachers do. So there's definitely more workshop topics. And then SEL and mindfulness teacher. So that is my passion. I go into classrooms and I teach mindfulness and social emotional learning around social awareness and growth mindset and decision-making skills. And the students, from my experience, want this information. They want to be able to have healthy relationships. They want to be able to have that inner sense of I am enough. And they want to have tools to help them regulate their big emotions. They want to have tools that help them regulate whether their decisions are being made out of a reaction versus a response. So these are things that I think are super important. And in the end, I wanted to share this poem with you. I always say to the kids, if I had a magic wand, so if I had a magic wand to wave, if every child was shown their worth and love surrounded them from birth, if gentle words and steady eyes helped their inner light to rise, they'd grow with self-love, not fear or doubt, with voices strong and hearts turned out, and with that love held deep and true, they'd build a kinder, peaceful world anew. If I had a magic wand to wave, every child would feel safe and whole. So I hope that this talk inspires you to wave your magic wand, because I believe we all have one. We all have a magic wand, and we are all filled with magic, and we can share that. And it's just remembering that and awakening that in ourselves to be able to inspire not just our children, but other people's children, and help contribute to a greater peaceful world out there. So thank you for embracing a beginner's mind. I believe that when we choose to stay open to new ideas, we invite growth into our lives, creating space for greater joy, well-being, and meaningful change, both within ourselves and in the world around us. My hope for you, as someone who holds the well-being of children close to your heart, is that you'll take from this talk what genuinely resonated with you, and that you'll choose to make it your own, integrating it into your life in a way that feels authentic and meaningful to you. In closing, when we parent and support children with an intentional focus on building a subconscious mind rooted in self-love, appreciation, intuition, confidence, and authentic connection, we aren't just raising a child, we're raising a soul who knows. The world is abundant, not scarce. Beauty is everywhere, even in struggle. Joy is a birthright, not a reward. We are connected, not alone. I believe this is the magic medicine our world needs. So thank you all for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to put this up here. Just you can take a picture if you need it, but thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I know it's hot in here, so I don't know if you have any questions, and I'm glad it was just. I think that was just about. Yeah, we're good.
How do you deal with it when you're like a part-time grandfather, and the parents are, 5 hours away and not really into any of the stuff?
Okay, I love that question. So, I feel that you, even as a part-time grandfather, the time that you have with, is it a grandson or
Granddaughters.
Okay, the time that you have with your granddaughters, if you're intentionally choosing to have experiences that are rooted in emotional support, let's say that you're conscious with them and you're not distracted and you're paying attention and you're modeling for them what that looks like from an adult, it doesn't matter how many times you're around them, they're going to remember you for that person who showed up for them in that way. And I feel like grandparents hold so much for kids. I feel like it's, for me, it was the biggest gift in my life. And having that time with a grandparent is priceless. And so doing special things, making it, let's say you have a tradition together, something that you talk about together, something that really makes it unique, the time that you spend with them.
Well, okay. The parents are thinking that all the kids need to be together all the time. So it's not like you're having one-on-one time. It's, grandparents with 4 kids going all over the place, and it's kind of difficult to create a one-on-one time when they're all over the place.
Right. I think that's where the quiet time and the pause sometimes comes in really and is super helpful. But I also think just it shows that you're putting family first because you're having them all together and you're choosing that time together, which I think is also beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Any other questions?
And do you think, and excellent. I mean,
thank you.
I didn't think I was going to stay, but you kept me.
Oh,
You
good.
kept me. And it sounds like a lot of these things for kids also need to be with all your relationships
Yes.
in the adult world. Is that?
Yes. For me, I'm continually working on self-improvement and self-development, and the subconscious mind and the programming, for a better word, that I have noticed in my life is that inner critic piece. And I feel like also the relationship piece. And so when we model for kids a healthy way of self-talk, right? A healthy way of communication, that's wiring those neural pathways to have that foundation. Well, if you're someone who has already been a parent and your children are older and that piece is not something that you can do from that 0 to 7, I believe just working on yourself and making those choices now is where you see the biggest difference. Because we have to know that someone can hear this information and go, wow, this is amazing. I want to take this and I want to put it into my life in the best way I know how. Other people might get this information and it might not resonate with them and it might not be for them. They might not be ready for it, or they might not even believe it. And that's okay too. That everyone is on their different path, but I think you're right. It's just across the board. I mean, positive messages, who doesn't like that, right? So having conscious conversations where the person you're talking to isn't distracted or isn't on their phone. I mean, those are all really wonderful things to have no matter what age you are. And also the magic, of course, is important no matter what age you are. So, yes.
Thank you tonight. That was
Yeah.
really inspiring to hear everything that you had to say. I did have one question about the subconscious mind programming those beliefs as a young child. What if you wanted to change some of those beliefs when you get older? Do you know any way how to do that?
Good question. So at this
Can you repeat the question?
so she was asking, so you're messaging that the beliefs that you have that have been seated in your subconscious mind when you're younger, and you're noticing they might not be healthy. How do you shift them as you get older?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I've worked on this on my own, so I can answer this a little bit. One of the things that I've learned is it takes repetition and it takes emotion connected to it. It also takes, they say, up to 72 hours of consistency. I know that sounds kind of interesting, but Bruce Lipton, I believe, explained that if you consciously do an activity, let's say you're going to try to reprogram something around money. A lot of people have like lack mindset or things like that. It's 1 minute you're like focused on it, and then something could happen, and then you're not thinking about it for 3 more days. And so it's that conscious, like making time for it, having it connect to an emotion, having it also, I think, connect to a physical experience as well, helps shift it. And music is another thing that can come to mind too. I don't know, you can look into the heart math. Heart math is another way. So it's basically through repetition, and I think it comes through joy as well, because what you're doing is you're choosing to do this for yourself, and it comes from finding that space inside where you want to transform some negative programmings into something that's going to bring you more joy and all the well-being that can come from shifting and feeling that pride from being able to work through that.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question.
It seems like the biggest work is with ourselves, as you know, in whatever stage that we are in terms of parent or grandparent or this or that. It's where do I get in my way, you know, to not be what I know would be what's asked for, needed, kind of quietly begged for. And I just think, you know, I mean, what I find so incredible about what you're doing, Anna, is just that, you know, it spans all ages, because we really basically are children, you know, in grown-up bodies.
Yes.
And doing children-like things
Right.
in grown-up bodies,
Yes.
thinking we're grown-ups doing grown-up things. And I just feel like, you know, that just the willingness, like the question from you, you know, the willingness just to look and say, you know what, I got some beliefs in here that, you know, came from my family and kind of programmed me very early, very sponge-like. Now, where do they not work? Where are they, you know, where are they not lined up with what I could say I was committed to in regards to the relationships that I'm in? So I think it's just, you know, like you were saying, kind of it's a self-exploration.
It is.
Spreading out to
Yes.
those in our field and
Yes.
beyond.
And having that self-compassion to not get overwhelmed, because some of us might have had programming that isn't just one or two things. We might have things that have, and it could feel overwhelming. I would say take it in small doses and look for help. And also, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that our teachers are those things that I said in the slide that I kind of live by, is that self-love, that appreciation, and that intuition. So if you're choosing self-love, then you're choosing to do something for yourself that is moving towards healing, right? So that is one piece of it. And then when you appreciate the fact that you're noticing it, I mean, wow, half the world is sleepwalking. So just appreciate the fact that you even notice that this is something you want to shift. That's like over 80% of it right there. And then the intuition. Every time you get to that point where you're that little, that voice in your head or that gurgle in your stomach makes you go, wait a minute, this does something that I want to shift. Listen to your intuition in a way that shows you that this is something I can look at closer, right? So it's building a relationship with your intuition, and it's helping children also stop and pause. The lesson is in the pause. My son teaches me this. He's my greatest teacher. He's a very blunt human who can just put me in my space of pause and make me go, whoa, you know, what was that all about? And it's something that I have to be accepting of, and I have to appreciate in him. So I think there's a lot of that piece. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
I'm so grateful that you are putting the information about the subconscious with parenting and young children. Because as I mentioned when we first met, I was a teacher for 25 years too, and saw exactly what you're describing. The children who had calm, happy parents came in smiling, and the children whose parents maybe didn't even come home one night, you know, didn't feed them. They were stressed.
Yes.
They were stressed.
Yeah.
No, I think what you're doing is really important.
Thank you.
Do you still teach within the public education system?
Thank you for that question. So it's piggybacking on what you just said. A little, I am someone who's very passionate about working with children. I'm very passionate about being an advocate for children, which put me into a place of overwhelm. And I ended up getting sick and ended up having some health issues from just being overwhelmed in my job. As a person who is always trying to strive and be supportive, I kind of felt like I couldn't do enough. So I had to take a year off to get myself my strength back, because I was seeing things that I'm not talking about in this talk, because it's not fun for me to describe what I've seen. It brings tears to my eyes. It gets me very emotional, because I've seen things that I don't want to see anymore. And the only way I can think about that is, instead of focusing on the problem, what can I do for a solution? And so, as a person who hasn't had people who resonate with this information in my direct schools that I've worked in, I'm going to go find them. So that's what my path is now. I'm looking for families and schools and parents and communities that are wanting to just really come together for our young children in ways that can just give them that environment of a community. I mean, I think for all of us, I really believe we came into this world with expectations. Are they being met? Right? I would like to meet some of those. Yes.
I'd like to share that I was on the same path, and I had to leave the profession as well. And I actually teach methodology for working with the subconscious mind. But,
That's amazing.
I'm busy doing internal, finishing up a book. And then when I have finished, I'll come back.
Yes.
More externally.
That's amazing.
But yes, it was like, no, staying in the system, got to get out of it. It's not the answer.
Yeah, it's not. And I feel like for me, I felt like a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. And when I say square, I mean a classroom.
Yes.
I don't know if little kids need to be in a square box. I don't want to push back too much on public school, because I know it's like the main thing that a lot of families have as their option, right? But I look forward to a day when it's not the only option for most families, where most families get to choose. Mm-hmm. And if they want to send their child to a school that puts this type of information in the forefront, then they get that chance. And I want that for families. So that's kind of my hope. I don't know how to get to that space, but that's kind of my dream.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's courageous to make that move.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's been an interesting journey for sure, because when you come in as someone who's kind of on the soapbox of kindness and compassion and empathy, and you get a pushback, it feels weird. The next thing you know, you get autoimmune disease, and you're like, wait a minute, what just happened? And it's one of those things where I look back on it now, and I believe, and I just said this to my friend the other night, and I'm not sure if you've heard of the let them theory, but one of the things I realized is, if a parent gets up in the morning, and a child gets up in the morning, and a teacher gets up in the morning, and all three of those people are excited to go to their school. If that kid is excited to go to school, if that parent is excited to drop that kid off at school because they love that school, and if that teacher is going to school happy and excited to be there because they believe that that's where they belong, then it's working for them, right? And so for me, I had to choose to shift and find that for myself. So.
I'm interested in that you're a certified grief companion. Do you find that one can really actually resolve grief, or do you just transform it?
very good question. So I didn't talk much about that, but this year has been about the grief journey for me. I've done quite a bit of work in the grief realm, mostly because I was seeing that in schools. Unacknowledged grief in kids. That actually is a huge piece of my work. And I believe that grief transforms us because love transforms us. And I believe finding that peace where you can see the joy and the grief as one, it's walking that fine line from being alive, right? We all are touched in so many ways by our stories, and they're just so unique and so beautiful. It doesn't matter where we're at. It can be such a gift to have others hear our stories and honor our stories and acknowledge our stories and be told your grief is okay, and it's okay to not be in a space where you know what you're going to do next. So I could go on and on about grief because I've been learning about it, and for me that piece was so interesting because I was realizing, like, whoa, my grief is so unique, but then there's every other human has been touched by it. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
I want to add to that because I've done some work with Anna with her grief companioning, and I feel like I've lightened my load a whole lot. I'm not sure if it's not gone, but it's moved into a much more healthy place or a much more productive spot in my subconscious. You know, so I love the simplicity of it, of that approach to it's not counseling, you know, and it's being with, and it's very powerful. And we haven't done a whole lot, but the bit that we've done has stuck with me. You know,
Thank you.
I'm still processing.
Yes. Yeah. The companioning piece, it takes it out of that therapy or that lens of I have the answers, right? Into more of that heart place. My journey with grief has been since I was a child, which brought me to being a teacher. When my grandmother passed, I lived in a small town. You know, the whole town knew she was very beloved in the small town, and I had one person in the school who acknowledged that grief for me. Other than that, there was no one that really even looked at me different or even asked me how I was. So I believe that seeded my subconscious mind to step into my needs are not important. I won't have support when I'm in, you know. I could go on and on about this, but it becomes this space of like, whoa, this eye-opening stuff, to know yourself in that way, like to connect the dots. And I just lighthearted joy way is how I kind of go about it. I can't not do it that way. That's just my personality. But on the other hand, life is supposed to be fun. And so I like to put that forward in all I do, if possible. That's why I hang out with small children and dance and run in meadows. So, yeah.
I have it's just a real personal way that I was kept slipping back to as you were speaking. I think your presentation is wonderful, everything you put together.
Thank you.
It's so huge.
It is. It's big. I know, and I even
It's
took out like
huge.
7 slides.
So, yeah. And what a project to do that and present that. I grew up in a family with 6 kids. And so I kept thinking about this time. There was this time where I was the little one, right? And the longest span of between my mom having babies was my 5 years. And I found out later that she had a miscarriage. So probably when I was 3, but I didn't know it.
There's grief.
And I was just loved and taken care of, and I had an aunt, my Aunt Anne, who took care of me, and while my mom was working or whatever, and it was such a beautiful time to have those 5 years. And that's what I keep thinking. I was by myself a lot. I was out on the driveway, and I had they call it imaginary friend, who I learned later was probably the little one that didn't live with miscarriage.
Did your parents
Because
support
She
that?
came to me later. She came to me later. She was a being that's been with me all my life.
And did your parents support, did you tell them, and did they support that you had an imaginary friend?
Yeah, everybody knew I had an imaginary friend, but I didn't know it was my angel sister till I learned probably, I don't know. 10
And so
years.
they cemented,
They did know, and there was a name,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, so
And,
many kids don't get that acknowledgement. So you were gifted that gift from your parents that it's okay to have this imaginary friend, and we honor that in you, and that's such a gift.
Yes, Kelly Bob.
Such
That
a
was
gift.
her name or his name.
Yeah,
and
and-
I learned later.
I love that story because it shows that
Very-
there's so many things that can come into play. Like
Right.
parents have a lot to deal
I
with.
was alone, but I wasn't alone.
Yeah,
I was out playing with my friend.
right.
And then when I was 5 years old, the next sister, Betsy, was born. And we have such
Yep.
stuff,
Yeah.
even now.
There's
You
so
know,
many, yeah, there's layers
you know,
to, yeah.
And so anyway, and I understand it more. You know, she was, I think my mom was probably scared in her next pregnancy something would happen. So Betsy has all sorts of concern about death. And
There's,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah, we each have such a different experience. But
Right.
I kept going back to being on the driveway by myself when you were talking
Right.
about little one, and that's
so
Well,
fun.
and you were getting that chance to have that silence piece. That's so important too. That giving the kids the bandwidth to just sit still. They're not bored anymore. They don't sit still. They're usually doing something. It's hard for a teacher. I could go on and on the things that I've seen, but most kids don't even know how to sit by themselves. Actually, most adults don't either. I kind of sometimes, that's something I've been working on.